Freudian what? Freudian who? Freudian where? Freudian slips.
Hi, Ollie.
Hi, Danny.
Hello, everyone else. Welcome back. If it's not welcome back, then nice to meet you. We hope that you guys stay a while. Please give us a like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, depending on what social platform you're on, we'd really appreciate it. Trying to actually make this thing work. We are Freudian Slips. This is the place where we get to talk about the shrinks, kinks, and thinks of the mental health field. And today, we're actually going to be talking about something that almost everyone has heard of, and a lot of people swear by, Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. Now, before y'all jump to any conclusions, this is not going to be why you should read this book or why we think that this is great. If you guys have been with us for a while, you have probably heard this kind of peppered in other episodes. I actually think that this is a bad resource. So this episode is going to be about how the 5 love languages can be more harmful than helpful, and why I think this is actually a terrible resource.
I think people should know, Danny, before we jump into this summer series, when we discussed the reality dating shows, I think some people might assume that was an Ollie idea. No, it was not. It was a Danny idea. That was Danny's love project. This one, I think ever since we decided that we wanted to do a podcast, you were like, that sounds so fun. I would love to rip apart the 5 love languages. From day one. And somehow, I don't know how, it didn't fit into our first year. I think we just knew it was going to take too much planning. We really wanted to go through the book, and like, you really wanted to map this thing out as your baby. And I so respect it. And I just want everyone to know that this is not like a, oh, should we just like talk? Oh yeah, this book I randomly found again. We should, oh yeah, that wasn't that great. No, this is Danny's passion project. This is his dissertation. He would love to, Sir Gary Chapman, if you ever listen to this, these are Danny's words to you. He's very opinionated. We're going to see the sassiest Danny we've seen yet. And I am so happy that 2026 is getting more of your personality.
Thanks. Yeah, I think one of the big reasons, I have to be honest, one of the big reasons why I didn't make it into our first year of the podcast is because it's that like big of an issue for me that I did feel very nervous about it. If we had done this within the first months of us like starting the podcast, I think it would have been a lot more of a rant, me just saying a bunch of things that are more emotional than anything else. It really does bother me. I think I needed the time to kind of sit with it, to almost forget it, to walk away from it, to have fun with other things, to then come back at this and say, why do I still not like it? Do I still not like it? Yeah, 100% I still don't like it. Now, how can I talk about it a little bit better? Because this is something that we've said multiple times. We really want the show to be about giving good information. I don't just want to rip into someone. I don't just want to tear someone down. I don't imagine that this person is a terrible person, but I just wanted to be as respectful as I can while also being as authentic. And so it took me some time to really kind of prep up and get ready for this episode. And I hope that you guys enjoy it.
Well, you know what I wonder too, Danny? You know how sometimes, like, I think now that the Stranger Things, like the season 5 or whatever, the last season's out, I think there's all these interviews coming out of them being like, I had no idea that this would like shape the rest of my career, or like that this series would set me up for the rest of my life. Like, we didn't know it would be this big. I genuinely wonder if like this is a very tiny book. I just kind of wonder if this guy had an idea and was like, yeah, like, obviously this is my theory, or these are this is a concept that I believe, and I just kind of want to throw it out there and like write a book on it. And like, I just wonder if he knew it would blow up to what it is.
That's interesting that you say that. This is not going to be the focus of today's episode, but I do just want to throw this in your mind, is that during the 80s and 90s, there was a big like push in the Christian like publishing industry.
Oh.
And so this is not unique.
Oh.
This is not like what you just suggested. No, I can neither confirm nor deny, but I strongly believe that is not what happened. If you actually go back like in time to see when like this surge happened, this was very much a thing to do at that time.
Was like publish Christian centered books?
Not necessarily publish Christian books, but that there was this big push in the Christian industry to kind of get their stuff out there. And so you'll notice that, I mean, this is a New York Times bestseller. This is a New York Times. And
I'm
think
not gonna
about
lie though, Danny, that I feel like that's like throwing fair trade on something nowadays. Like, what is that really?
exactly, exactly. And so you look at yes, the Christian population is huge, but it's not the entire United States. And so how
Yeah.
did they still sell enough? Because the publishing industry will like buy this shit in bulk.
Okay. I love conspiracies. Or not
Yeah,
not conspiracy, but like I love the idea that it's like, this is due to the publishing of the time. Like I
yeah.
love it.
Again,
Ooh, okay.
not
That's a
not the
good that's a
focus.
fun fact to know though.
Yeah, not the focus of the episode, and I don't want to dip into conspiracy, but I'm also not pulling this from my ass. This is actually a product of a bigger movement that was happening at the time. And so
Mhm.
if you look back and start to see what other kind of books kind of line up with this, you'll see it's the same grifter shit. A lot of people are just selling the same message. This person is just one other person that was in that movement, and it just so happened that his was a lot more popular than others. So,
Oh. I see, I love learning the context behind these things.
yep.
Okay. Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, if you have ever taken the quiz, if you've ever been told, well, that's not my love language, or have ever wondered why a relationship conversation suddenly turned into a personality test, this episode is for you. If you're someone who's just interested in psychology, if you go to therapy, or if you're in a relationship, I hope that you leave this episode with much better ideas, with a change in perspective. And if you're someone who is a therapist who works as a mental health professional, and you have been referring people to this book, I really hope that this episode makes you take a second look, because where did this idea come from for me? I am a couples therapist. I specialize in couples work, and I'm also a professor. And at the university that I teach at, one of my favorite courses to teach is the treatment of couples. So I spend a lot of my professional time around just couples and working with communication, dynamics, sex, you name it, all right? I still have a lot of clients talking about this, and a lot of students telling me that they would refer. And so this is what usually happens. Either I have couples come in and they'll tell me about their problems, and they'll tell me their strengths and weaknesses. And just as they're kind of telling me about their dynamics, about their relationship, they'll always slip in that we're trying to do each other's love languages, that we've looked at the love languages, that we're always focusing on love languages. And I try very, very hard to not roll my eyes. And if I'm in the classroom, then what happens is my beautiful students, right? I'm not blaming any one of them because they're students. They don't know any better. But usually we'll kind of open up the floor. Either we're kind of looking at a case and we're doing a little, case conceptualization. I'm giving them some questions, or they're doing a little bit of role play. And I'll ask them, what would you do in this case? What resources would you offer this couple? How would you handle this? And I still get this semester over semester that they would refer their couples to read the five love languages. They'll have sessions where they'll talk about the five love languages, and I'll always ask them, but have you read it? Have you read the book? And believe it or not, most of my clients and students will tell me no.
Okay. Wait a minute. See, I'm kind of glad. I'm sure once we look deeper into it, I'm gonna be as opinionated about this as you. And even
Mm,
like now I see the religious angle that I just don't know if like the first time I read this when I was in like high school, I don't know if I
sure.
even like picked up on that a whole lot or like
Yeah.
fixated on it. Now as a therapist, I get why that's, and I don't want to say problematic because for some people that might be the right angle. That might be what they're looking for. But I get why it's not for everyone. But I'm very happy that in my couples work, if it's come up, it's kind of come up as a, "Oh, yeah, like, we've heard of that," right? Or, like, so for like, "What do you both think you'd be?" Like, I mean, maybe but it's so not emphasized that it's nothing I'd cling on to, nor is it a book I, like, recommend couples read. Also, the fact that anyone would recommend a book that they haven't read,
Mhm.
I don't care what your profession is, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And so before we go any further, in case you guys just questioned it, I have read this book. I have actually read this book and have marked it to shit. So I believe that whether it's a textbook I offer in my courses, or whether it's a book I invite one of my clients to read, I have like a no bullshit guarantee. I'm only going to refer you a book that I have actually read and gone through. And so, yeah, this is something that kind of like you, Ollie. I think I was introduced to the five love languages when I was younger, and I just didn't clock a lot of the stuff. Right? It just didn't hit me, and so I was like, oh yeah, makes sense. It's whatever. It's not until I got a little bit older that I was actually in relationships that I started looking at, couples dynamics and blah blah blah. This is even before I actually got into a master's program to become a therapist. The cracks really started to show. And I also want to make this very clear. I'm not taking a shot at Christianity because another fun fact that some of you guys might know, I don't think we've been secretive on the show. Like I am Christian. I do hold Christian views. So I'm not taking a shot at Christianity, but I'm also not defending it where it clearly needs a lot of work and needs a lot of growth. And so, yeah, this is one of my big issues and big inspiration for a show like this, as Ollie said at the beginning, because as professionals in the field, I really do believe that we need to be leading the field and not being led by pop psychology. This is pop psychology.
This is, I think, that's such a good point, Danny. This is like, I think, the definition of pop psychology.
Yeah, yeah. So before we critique it, let's kind of talk about where it comes from. Give you a little background. Gary Chapman. So Gary Chapman is a pastor and author. He is not a psychologist or a researcher, and most of his work will come from his experience doing pastoral counseling within Christian communities. So the book, The Five Love Languages, was first published in 1990, and it was never intended to be a scientific theory. It's based on Chapman's observations from his counseling, not from peer-reviewed research or clinical trials. I think that really matters because the way something is created affects how carefully we should apply it. I am not saying that you shouldn't ever voice your opinions. I'm not saying that. But when you are publishing a book and you understand that you are an influential figure, I do think that it's important that you're able to back up what you're writing, either in science or credential. And I don't think Gary Chapman really has either one of them.
I was going to say any research that I've looked into, like about the book, does say like none of this is like, none of this has ever been tested. Like this is just solely based on an opinion. This is not something that has ever been tried, like brought up in a scientific way. I just find it so interesting. I don't know. Maybe that speaks to the fact that my favorite type of research is I should probably know the name of it. What's the one where they take, like, they'll be like, we're going to look at like 100 studies on these things and like compare them and see what we find, like cross study analysis and this or that. Like, I love taking stuff that already exists and like research that already exists and finding patterns within them or being like, whoa, okay, so based on like the thousands of things written on this topic, what are things we're noticing? Where are there discrepancies or like, this stuff seems really not consistent where these things are very consistent. Like is just wild to me. I get people who write novels. I get people who do research and write studies. I guess I just find it interesting. Like to write something like this and be like, this is how this works without conducting any kind of experiment or actual like scientific data around it, I guess I just find to be a very interesting approach to writing a book.
Yeah, yeah, as do I. So, as for me, I have a few general gripes with this book. I just want to get them out of the way so that we can go into some more professional or more official critiques, right? So, this is just my rant, and like I said, it took me a year to condense it down to just this. So let me say this. As we kind of go through this, I think you're going to notice it. If you guys end up picking up the book for yourself, number one, please get it at a thrift store. Don't actually buy it and give this person money. And number two, maybe you guys will see what I'm talking about. My first big gripe with this book is that the stories seem fake. I understand that authors often change small things in people's stories to protect their confidentiality, but these stories seem more like they were made to fit his argument, as if he has an idea and is piecemealing his experiences together to prove his point rather than finding it organically in the work that he does.
Can I have an add-on to this one?
Sure.
Maybe rather than fake, from my opinion, I would say they feel incomplete. Like it feels like this it's not that this feels untrue, but it's like, but then what about these other things that maybe would exist in that too? We're like, I feel like this might be leaving out a big other thing though. Like they just didn't quite feel fully real.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Gripe number two is that there's never talk about how the couple grows or changes. Once they hear about the five love languages, they either go off and do their own work, or the story simply cuts to the end and everything is fixed. This, I think, makes the book very weak because, in my opinion, it either presents the five love languages as a cure all, as if a simple introduction of them was all that the couple actually needed, or it hints at the potential fact that these couples don't do the real day to day work with Chapman, or that he doesn't know how to do real counseling, so he can't comment on it. I also want to tie that into my next gripe. Number three, that Chapman doesn't seem interested in exploring if couples should be together. I think it's important to remind people that Chapman is Christian and that his counseling work that serves as the anecdotal evidence for the book came from the 80s and 90s, presumably. So I'm not surprised at how conservative this book is with marriage and divorce. But as you might see with some of the examples that we'll show today, some of these couples, primarily the men, showcase some very questionable traits. I'm not saying a bad habit is grounds for divorce, but the amount of effort Chapman puts in ignoring them to peddle his five languages borders on the dangerous and unethical for me.
Can I share something really quick? I do not personally know many. I know that there are like Christian or Catholic like based therapists or like that operate from that lens. I've had a few sets of couples come to me who the only type of couples therapy they have done is through their church. And it
Yeah.
is through a member of the church or a priest, not someone who is actually like claiming to be any kind of therapist or counselor, but they
Yeah.
provide counseling as a member of the church. And it is interesting because the two or three couples I've worked with was all around infidelity. And it's no judgment. I am just saying I found it very
Mm,
interesting that the lens that the quote unquote counselor or that the religious person was coming at, it never explored things that a therapist or someone who I think like you or me, Danny, even though we operate very differently, they did not explore many things that I think you or I would. It was very from a lens of like, how do we move on? How do we forgive? Things
yeah.
happen. How do we keep this marriage going?
Mm.
And so, not to say that that can never be beneficial to people. I just remember each time I've heard about it, I find it very interesting because I'm like, wow, I get that this person is trying to like quote unquote help. I just don't know how helpful this really is. And it feels like there is definitely a certain message being pushed. And it's interesting because for all these couples, I've been like, well, I would approach that very differently.
Yeah.
And they all have been like, wow, okay, like that seems to resonate more with us. Or like, oh, thank you. Like, I feel like I was being told I just had to get over it or whatever it was. And so, again, it's no judgment against Christianity. I was raised Catholic, but I don't, it was very interesting to me how they approached what they call counseling and the guidance versus how a therapist or other like licensed professional clinical counselors I know would approach the same topics.
For sure.
So,
Yeah.
just to speak to that.
No, thank you. My fourth gripe is that the information he presents as factual never comes with any citations.
Yes. Well, and as we've said, I don't think any of these are scientifically backed. And I
Yeah.
don't think that that is super hidden.
Yeah. So, as an educator and a mental health professional, I understand that the most infectious thing in the world outside of germs is an idea. And
Oh.
I believe that those of us who disseminate information have a responsibility to make sure that the information we pass along is as sound as possible. And a lot of what Chapman writes here is strong opinion at best and straight lies at worst. There's a particularly egregious example that shows up in one of the later chapters of the book about sex. Chapman writes, for the male, sexual desire is physically based. That is, the desire for sexual intercourse is stimulated by the buildup of sperm cells in the seminal fluid in the seminal vesicles. When the seminal vesicles are full, there is a physical push for release. Thus, the male's desire for sexual intercourse has a physical root. This is fancied up blue ball bullshit. And that there's no citation because it's not true. And at very best, it's severely taken out of context. But think about it, right? Think about it. Give this information, give this book to an ignorant couple. And again, Ollie and I use that word very, very neutrally.
Mhm.
We love the word ignorant. Give this to an ignorant couple, a conservative couple, a couple, or just people in general who don't do what we do, who don't have the education that we have. And no wonder that there's so many guys out there walking around with such stupid ideas. Not only Is desire or libido very, very complex? It's the result of hormones acting on the brain, not by some local feedback loop coming from your ball sack. This is just wrong.
Yeah, it's like when you pull out things like this, Danny, from the book, it's like, again, I almost love that the last time I really read this, like, in depth
Mhm.
was when I was much younger.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, younger all I mean, I didn't clock that. I wasn't like, "Oh, wow, okay, that's how physical desire works in men." But yeah, it's like now that you read it back as someone who has done years of education in sex therapy, you're like,
Right?
"Oh,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and
why?"
this is in a book designed for couples. So, like, I'm picturing the poor wife or girlfriend that reads this because as you will see, I believe that this book was really written for women to treat their male spouses better, male partners better. We might get into that a little bit, but you read that information and it's like, yeah, guys are always saying, well, like, oh my god, it hurts. Like it's something that I have to do. And this is the information that you have that really kind of reinforces that idea. I don't like it. This does not make me feel good that this is such a popular idea.
No, and I will say kind of one of my gripes too that fits with all of yours is I guess I just wish that if these clearly are his opinions,
Mhm.
I wish it felt more like these were his opinions. Like
Mm.
I wish it was clearly stated somewhere that none of this was really researched. Like this is based on my experience as a what is he, pastor? It's like I just wish maybe the context around it was a little bit more transparent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. My last gripe is that this book can read very sexist. It is a very gendered book. Again, this is a Christian and conservative work, but we're also reviewing the book's 2015 edition. This book was redone in 2015, and I think it might have had like another edition after that. Um, I'm not saying Chapman needs to become a queer ally, but the examples that he uses still present as wildly dated. You know, if you've been doing this for so long, then at least go back to your book and modernize it, update it. I would hope that you have new couples that you've worked with since then that can give you some more realistic or yeah, just some better examples. No.
Might be pulling it out of my butt, but I swear I do remember reading this book the first time, and one of the examples or the stories was so stereotypical that I did laugh. Like it was something along the lines of a man wanting his wife to make him a sandwich, or like something that was like so stereotypical
Mhm.
that like I remember younger me even did laugh, and I was like, okay, we really had to like, come on. It could have been a panini. Like, this is ridiculous. So it was, but like, yeah, some of the examples are just so ridiculous that, not to say there's never been a wife who made her husband a sandwich, but like, I don't
Sure.
know. If I'm writing a book that's trying to convince these things, I might not lean too heavily into those, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right. So to give you all an idea of what I'm talking about, we can look at the story that he gives for the first love language, words of affirmation. So Ollie, please take it away with that one.
Thank you. Popcorn, Ollie. Wait, sorry, I just have to share because it is hilarious. I was just watching a comedian last night that was talking about how popcorn reading is just for people to point out how stupid their peers are and just to pick on their friends and be like, popcorn, Jason, I know you can't read. And so I just find it funny that literally the next day we're popcorn reading. So if I mess up, sorry, there was no one else for Danny to popcorn. Okay, so here's this one. What would happen to the emotional climate of a marriage if the husband and wife heard such words of affirmation regularly? Several years ago, I was sitting in my office with my door open. A lady walking down the hall said, "Have you got a minute?" "Sure, come in." She sat down and said, "Dr. Chapman, I've got a problem. I can't get my husband to paint our bedroom. I've been after him for 9 months. I've tried everything I know, and I can't get him to paint it." My first thought was, "Lady, you're at the wrong place. I'm not a paint contractor." But I said, "Tell me about it." She said, "Well, last Saturday was a good example. You remember how pretty it was. Do you know what my husband did all day long? He was cleaning out his computer files. So what did you do?" I went in there and said, "Dan, I don't understand you. Today would have been a perfect day to paint the bedroom, and here you are working on your computer." "So did he paint the bedroom?" I inquired. "No, it's still not painted. I don't know what to do." "Let me ask you a question," I said. "Are you opposed to computers?" "No, but I want the bedroom painted." "Are you certain your husband knows that you want the bedroom painted?" "I know he does," she said. "I have been after him for 9 months." "Let me ask you one more question. Does your husband ever do anything good?" "Like what?" "Like taking the garbage out, or putting gas in the car, or paying the electric bill, or running to the store to get milk and toilet paper. Yes, she said, he does some of those things. Then I have 2 suggestions. 1, don't ever mention painting the bedroom again. I repeated. Don't ever mention it again. I don't see how that's going to help. She said, look, you just told me he knows that you want the bedroom painted. You don't have to tell him anymore. He already knows. The second suggestion I have is that the next time your husband does anything good, give him a verbal compliment. If he takes the garbage out, say, Dan, I want you to know I really appreciate you taking the garbage out. Don't say, about time you took the garbage out. The flies were going to carry it out for you. If you see him paying the electric bill, put your hand on his shoulder and say, Dan, I really appreciate you paying the electric bill. I hear there are husbands who don't do that, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it. Or, I'm sorry, Danny, it's getting hard to read multiple pages of this. Or, I really appreciated you running out to the store when I had to finish that project. Every time he does anything good, give him a verbal compliment. I don't see how that's going to help get the bedroom painted. I said, you asked for my advice. You have it. It's free. She wasn't very happy with me when she left. 3 weeks later, however, she came back to my office and said it worked. She had learned that verbal compliments are far greater motivations than nagging words. I am not suggesting verbal flattery in order to get your spouse to do something you want. The object of love is not getting something you want, but doing something for the well-being of the one you love. It is a fact, however, that when we receive affirming words, we are far more likely to be motivated to reciprocate and do something our spouse desires.
Yeah. This is a perfect example of my gripes. So I understand that the first edition was published in the 90s, and I know how innocently ignorant some Christian couples or communities can be, but I still find it hard to believe that this is a real conversation. The general message in the story is that compliments are far better motivators than nagging, which is true. But Chapman will often ignore so many issues in order to make his point. And as a real therapist, when I read the way Chapman talks to people, I get why so many people see counseling as a joke.
Can we I'm sorry, just the line of questioning.
Thank you. I'm going to get into that.
Okay.
I'm going to get into that.
Has he never done anything good? You're like, sir, we are far beyond. Let's focus.
Yeah. So let me remind all of us what the basic issue that this woman is coming in with. She has been asking her husband to paint a bedroom for the past 9 months. 9 months. 4 walls, right? This shit takes maybe a weekend to do. 9 months. This guy has instead been cleaning out his computer files, amongst other things, I'm sure. Yes, he does other stuff too. But the point is that there's this known project that is being ignored despite the wife's constant reminders. And how does Chapman decide to react? First, he starts off with a thought, I'm not a paint contractor. Now, this might sound really dumb, but please think about it for a second because I want to be very serious. How are we supposed to read this thought? It's me, like reading this book, and I see that in a book about a professional who is talking about clients and how to help them, puts in this line. How am I supposed to read it? Either Chapman really thinks that she's asking him to paint his room. She thinks that that's where the conversation is going to go, or he's making a joke.
Or I struggle to trust said professional that this is their first thought when they're there to help clients, when you would think a professional would understand that this is not about painting the room.
Yes, right? So from the very beginning, he doesn't seem to take the woman seriously. And I think it continues in the lines of questioning. He asks, well, let me ask you, are you opposed to computers? Like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Honestly, what does that have to do with anything? Like, is that really what you think the issue is, sir, who sees couples, who does counseling?
This feels, Danny, like when we're learning how to do therapy. And if let's say that on your first attempt as like someone who really wants to be a therapist, that's your question. Let's say your professor pauses you and is like, what was the point of asking that?
Yeah.
Let's say they say yes. What is that? Where are we going from there?
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting. It doesn't feel like a lot of these questions have any purpose he could really like explain.
Yeah. Another question he asks is, well, are you sure that he knows that he wants the bedroom painted? Again, 9 months.
Yeah, let's just gaslight her. I like that. Let's take that approach. She doesn't. Okay, so she's not against computers as taking over the world. We got that cleared.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make sure she's not crazy. And this is actually all her fault.
Yeah.
Number 2.
The other question he asks is, well, does your husband ever do anything good? Again, like, why? Why does your head go there? It sounds like he's, and again, I think you'll see this in other examples. It's very misogynist light. It's very, male centered. Like, the guys are working so hard. Give them a break. And I'm a dude. I'm a dude and I'm offended. I'm a dude and I'm embarrassed by how the men are represented in this book. His big advice is then to never mention the paint job again and to give the husband verbal compliments. And when she questions him, he simply says, well, you asked for my advice, you have it, it's free. He sounds like a condescending asshole. He talks to the woman like she's an idiot. But what
Okay.
happens, what happens though, is 3 weeks later, she comes back and it worked.
Okay, yes. So, do I agree with this overall notion? And I totally tell clients this all the time. It's like when you do notice that your spouse is doing these things that you've been wanting them to do, it's like if we've just been nagging, 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 it's like, have we also been,
Yeah,
complimenting them or acknowledging when they are doing these things? Like, I completely agree with that line of logic.
agree.
However, what I find interesting is like this random idea of like, if you just compliment them on like, if I were to just start telling my husband all these things I'm thankful for, but in the back of my head, I'm like, please, for the love of God, wash our car. And I'm like, you did so good cleaning the shower. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you for emptying the dishwasher. That I don't think as a therapist, that's not technically getting the car. That has nothing to
Yeah,
do specifically with the task of the car. There should be a way that we can be able to tell our partner specific things that we would like from them, or like, hey, like this kind of stuff I've appreciated so much. If the next, when you have a free chance, if you could wash the car, to me, that one's like the next top thing I would really, really appreciate. Like, it's very weird to me how broad this got. And it was like, just compliment them on things and he will give you the Birkin bag. It's like, what? Like, how did that even connect?
Mhm.
So the overall premise I get, like, absolutely, we should acknowledge our spouse. We should like verbalize when we're appreciative and all these things. Absolutely. But ignoring the specific thing that's causing us distress, I think it's like, okay, like you said, it's very funny that it's like, oh, he came back in 3 weeks and he did it crazy. And I'm not saying that couldn't happen. I'm just
Yeah,
saying, as a therapist who's trying to set you up for success, that wouldn't really be my roadmap. I wouldn't be like,
yeah.
this is how we're gonna get that room painted. It's like,
Mhm.
no, we didn't even address the room. If anything, that's like a fluke that it got painted.
Yeah. Yeah. And the real shit, I think, is that I agree with you. I actually think it's very possible that 3 weeks later he would have painted it. If she just stopped nagging and then started complimenting, I'm pretty sure he would have felt the tension. He would have noticed the absence and would have done it. And I know there's a lot of us that say, well, like, I'm not going to do it if you tell me to. There's just like this little bratty, like, meh thing about it. But even then, like, that didn't solve the problem.
Yeah.
That, like, your advice didn't solve anything. It was just a really dumb band-aid. The issue of communication still persists. So this is just one example. Is there anything that the five love languages does right? A little bit. Well, before we go any further, I want to be very clear. The popularity of five love languages makes sense. At its core, the ideas are people express and receive care differently. Feeling loved matters, and miscommunication is a common thing in relationships. I think that this is true, and I don't think that anybody is going to argue this. For some couples, the model gives language that to needs that they've never articulated before, and could be a pretty good conversation starter. The problem is when we treat this as truth instead of a tool. Because of how popular the book is, and because I'm a therapist, people are often quite shocked to hear that I don't like this concept. When I explain why, I'm often met with a bit of like pushback. So, I'll tell people I really don't like the five love languages, and this is why. And they'll be like, oh, but Danny, obviously, you can't take it that seriously, or we know that, you shouldn't be doing this or that. And while that might be true, I still think that's something that bothers me because it makes me ask, well, who is this book for? Because it's definitely not for me, a mental health professional that takes their job seriously, because I'm reading this and I think that it's shit. So I'm not the target audience. So is the target audience someone who doesn't think that far, who can't think that far? Is it for them? Because if it is, they're the ones I'm actually trying to defend. They're the ones who don't know the X, Y, and Z, who don't know all the excuses.
Well, and Danny, can I throw out there too? So I like look through the problems that I know we're gonna get into, but I was just
Mhm.
wondering like where I don't know like if this one specifically fits into one of those, but where my brain goes to is like I am not saying that in general it's not nice to receive love in these 5 ways. Or if you're
Yeah.
from a family where you never even thought to give verbal praise and you're learning like, oh, like that really matters a lot to people. Like that can really help relationships grow and bridge it. Like I think that's lovely. But I think it's very broad. And I think when you start looking into the nitty gritty of how to implement it, or like once you remotely try to like funnel this thing down, it
Mhm.
becomes like, okay, like let's say your love language is gift giving. Also, who is to say that maybe you have a healthy relationship with
Yeah.
gift giving? Or
Yeah.
why do you resonate so much with that? And now you've decided unless you shower me with gifts, it means you don't love me. And it's like there's lots of pieces to it that I think are like, but when is like it doesn't really matter. If just like
Mm.
that's my love language, it's like that doesn't necessarily mean you have a healthy relationship with it. Or like words of affirmation.
Mhm.
What if it's to such an extent that it's just like you need people to tell you this stuff to even remotely feel okay about yourself or to like be able to do anything or else you're crippled with anxiety and it's like, well, I don't know because I don't know if they told me that they wanted me to or do they not want me to. It's like that's not healthy at that point.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it goes into, like you said, the examples are very like, poof, this love language was implemented, outcome happened. But
Yeah.
it's not like a practical example of all the ways that there's so many nuances to life. Like I wish relationships were this simple. I wish it was just like learn each other's love languages and we can really get somewhere. I think it's good to know. I think it's a cute concept that it's like it's nice to just know which one your spouse or partner would gravitate toward. But I think it's really dangerous to like chalk it up to these 5 things and have it seem this simple.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, 100%. We will get into that one. So
Okay.
let's dive in.
Yes.
We're going to go over 4 big critiques of this book, not just from me and Ollie, but this is a lot of the research that we've done. We looked all over the place and kind of compiled these things into 4 major critiques. Problem number 1 is that the 5 love languages oversimplifies human needs. So the first issue is that the model reduces emotional connection to 5 neat categories. Those categories are words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, gifts, and physical touch. Now, to be fair, I do think that Chapman understands this. Physical touch can be considered an act of service. You can gift quality time, and many consider good quality time to be spent doing most, if not all, the other 4 things. The problem is that to really accept this, that they all blend together, I think would mean that Chapman wouldn't have much of a book. So instead, what we get is chapters that read like filler and are built around some really bad examples. Ollie, why don't you lead us through one of them?
All right. So this one is The Gift of Self, page 81, if anyone wants to follow along in their own text. There is an intangible gift that sometimes speaks more loudly than a gift that can be held in one's hand. I call it the gift of self, or the gift of presence. Being there when your spouse needs you speaks loudly to the one whose primary love language is receiving gifts. Sonia once said to me, "My husband loves softball more than he loves me." "Why do you say that?" I inquired. "On the day our baby was born, he played softball. I was lying in the hospital all afternoon while he played softball," she said. "Was he there when the baby was born?" "He stayed long enough for the baby to be born, but 10 minutes afterward, he left. It was awful. It was such an important moment in our lives. I wanted us to share it together. I wanted Tony to be there with me." That baby was now 15 years old, and Sonia was talking about the event with all the emotion as though it had happened yesterday. I probed further. "Have you based your conclusion that Tony loves softball more than he loves you on this one experience?" "No," she said. "On the day of my mother's funeral." I'm sorry, I can't. "On the day of my mother's funeral, he also played softball." "Did he go to the funeral?" "Yes, he did. He went to the funeral, but as soon as it was over, he left to get to his game." I couldn't believe it. My brothers and sisters came to the house with me, but my husband was playing softball. Later, I asked Tony about those 2 events. He knew exactly what I was talking about. "I knew she would bring that up," he said. "I was there, all the labor, and when the baby was born. I took pictures. I was so happy. I couldn't wait to tell the guys on the team. But my bubble was burst when I got back to the hospital that evening. She was furious with me. I couldn't believe what she was saying. I thought she would be proud of me for telling the team. And when her mother died, she probably didn't tell you that I took off work a week before she died and spent the whole week at the hospital with her in her mother's house doing repairs and helping out. After she died and the funeral was over, I felt I had done all I could do. I needed a breather. I liked to play softball, and I knew that would help me relax and relieve some of the stress I'd been under. I thought she would want me to take a break. I had done what I thought was important to her, but it wasn't enough. She has never let me forget those 2 days. She says I love softball more than I love her. That's ridiculous. He was a sincere husband who failed to understand the tremendous power of presence. His being there for his wife was more important than anything else in her mind. Physical presence in the time of crisis is the most powerful gift you can give if your spouse's primary love language is receiving gifts. Your body becomes the symbol of your love. Remove the symbol, and the sense of love evaporates. In counseling, Tony and Sonia worked through the hurts and misunderstandings of the past. Eventually, Sonia was able to forgive him, and Tony came to understand why his presence was so important to her.
You'll never know about the counseling they did because it doesn't fucking matter. Moving on.
That was also done within the church, and it was all Sonia's fault. And no, I'm kidding. But okay, yeah. I mean, and to speak to your gripe number one, how are you going to argue that's a gift and not
An act of service,
quality time,
not quality time, right? I don't fucking know.
The gift of time,
Yeah.
Quality time, one of your other love languages.
And like, really quick, sidebar, like 15 years between the baby and the mom dying. And this guy still needed Chapman to mansplain. Don't leave your wife when she needs you. Like, what do you mean? Is that like are you basing your conclusion on this one thing? It's like, really, bitch? Like, really, Chapman? You think that I have no other conversations with you? Think this has never happened since then?
It is funny. The tone is very like, you're still holding on to that. It was 15 years ago, where I think I'd hope a responsible therapist feels like, ooh, you're still like, this still hurts.
Yeah.
Like, that goes to show how impactful and probably traumatic this was for you. Like, that is not to judge, like, damn, girl, you can't forgive 15 years later. Like, kid's 15 now. We get it. He wasn't there. He's working on it. The tone is insane.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd still be married if after my daughter was born, I was just like, all right, you got it from here. I gotta go hang out with the boys.
I would love to see a satirical piece on this, written like almost like a mirror to this, but a satire. Like, even in the first example, I just picture someone being like, honey, thank you so much for paying the electrical bill with my money, since I'm the primary breadwinner in our family. But thank you so much for grabbing my checkbook and paying for that for us. Like, while I cook dinner and breastfeed our baby at the same time. Like, I just think it'd be hilarious to let like a queer 2026 satirical version of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't realize how bad he comes off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, you're reading full excerpts. The reason why I wanted you to read like pages and paragraphs is because I don't want anyone to think that I'm pulling this out of context.
It's because you wanted to popcorn my bitch ass and be like, see, Ollie's not at reading. No, just kidding.
You're actually really, really good at reading.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, no. I'm glad we're doing it too, because I don't remember reading this and see, this is what scares me. It's not clearly stated that he is not a therapist or like any kind of legitimate counseling. And to think that someone would talk to you like this or ask these questions that have no ground, like they're just like, what method, what theory does that come from? Why would you approach it like this? The fact that this person's like, that's just the question I wanted to ask. Like, that's not how we do our job. So I also just think it's kind of like irritating that it might make it seem like this is how a therapist would do this. Like, no.
Yeah. So real humans are way more complex than this. Our needs change depending on stress, trauma, life stage, mental health, the specifics of the relationship that we're in. Someone might need physical touch when they feel safe, but need emotional reassurance when they're overwhelmed. A love language doesn't really account for the context, power, or emotional regulation. And when we start identifying only with one love language, we can lose access to the other forms of care that actually do matter.
Hmm.
And I think the husband was a good example of that. Like, if he did the test, I'm pretty sure he would resonate with acts of service being his love language, because he's saying, look at everything I did up until the event. Once the event was done, I'm off the chain. Like, I'm good. I don't have any more responsibilities after this, as if it's not my child. As if that's not, even if I didn't care about my mother-in-law, I still cared about my wife.
I
Like,
don't
that's
know.
her
Sonia
grief
was.
process and I'm her husband. Why am I leaving at the time when they need me most?
I don't know if Sonia was Hispanic because I don't think this man would have had a car to drive the softball. Not, I'm just speaking from experience, okay? I don't know any man who'd still have his tires.
Let's go on to big problem number 2.
Yes.
All right, so big problem number 2 with this book is that it could become a way to avoid emotional responsibility. And this one I actually see clinically quite often. I'll get comments like, I'm just not good at words of affirmation. I just don't really care about sex. Acts of service aren't my love language. Suddenly, the model becomes a reason not to grow. Healthy relationships require learning skills that don't come naturally: empathy, repair, accountability, listening. None of these are love languages, but they are essential in a healthy relationship. If your partner needs reassurance and your response is, well, that's not my love language, what you're really saying is that I'm not willing to stretch for you. This is not about compatibility. This is avoidance. And there's a really, really nice example that Ollie is going to take us through right now.
Page 113 is where we're starting for anyone following along. They were about 6 months into the marriage when Maria began to feel that Joe was withdrawing from her. He was working longer hours, and when he was at home, he spent considerable time with the computer. This guy's really into the computer. When she finally expressed her feelings that he was avoiding her, Joe told her that he was not avoiding her, but simply trying to stay on top of his job. He said that she didn't understand the pressure that he was under and how important it was that he do well in his first year on the job. Maria wasn't pleased, but she decided to give him space. She began to develop friendships with other wives who lived in the apartment complex. Often when she knew Joe was going to work late, she would go shopping with one of her friends instead of coming straight home after work. Sometimes she was not at home when Joe arrived. That annoyed him greatly, and he accused her of being thoughtless and irresponsible. Maria retorted, "Who's irresponsible? You don't even call me and let me know when you'll be home. How can I be here for you when I don't even know when you'll be here? And when you are here, you spend all your time working. You don't need a wife. All you need is a computer." To which Joe shot back, "I do need a wife. Don't you understand? That's the whole point. I do need a wife." But Maria did not understand. She was extremely confused. In her search for answers, she went to the public library and checked out several books on marriage. Marriage is not supposed to be this way, she reasoned. I have to find an answer to our situation. When Joe went on his laptop, Maria would pick up her book. In fact, on many evenings, she read until midnight. On his way to bed, Joe would notice her and make sarcastic comments, such as, if you read that much in if you read that much in college, you would have made straight A's. Maria would respond, I'm not in college. I'm in marriage. And right now, I'd be satisfied with a C. Joe went to bed without so much as a second glance. At the end of the first year, Maria was desperate. She had mentioned it before, but this time she calmly said to Joe, I'm going to find a marriage counselor. Do you want to go with me? But Joe answered, I don't need a marriage counselor. I don't have time to go to a marriage counselor. I can't afford a marriage counselor. Then I'll go alone, said Maria. Fine, you're the one who needs counseling anyway. The conversation was over. Maria felt totally alone, but the next week she made an appointment with a marriage therapist. After 3 sessions, the counselor called Joe and asked if he would be willing to come in and talk about his perspective on their marriage. Joe agreed, and the process of healing began. 6 months later, they left the counselor's office with a new marriage. I said to them, what did you learn in counseling that turned your marriage around? In essence, Dr. Chapman, Joe said, we learned to speak each other's love language. The counselor did not use that term, but as you gave the lecture today, it came to me. My mind raced back to our counseling experience, and I realized that's exactly what happened to us. We finally learned to speak each other's love language. So, what is your love language, Joe? I asked. Physical touch, he said, without hesitation. Physical touch for sure, said Maria. And yours, Maria? Quality time, Dr. Chapman. That's what I was crying for in those days while he was spending all his time with his job and his computer. How did you learn that physical touch was Joe's love language? It took a while, Maria said. Little by little, it began to come out in counseling. At first, I didn't think he even realized it. It's true, Joe said. I never told her that I wanted to be touched, although I was crying inside for her to reach out and touch me. In our dating relationship, I had always taken the initiative in touching, but she had always been responsive. I felt that she loved me. But after we got married, there were times that I reached out to her physically and nothing. Maybe with her new job responsibilities, she was too tired. I don't know, but I took it personally. I felt that she didn't find me attractive. Then I decided I wouldn't even try because I didn't want to be rejected. So I waited to see how long it would be before she'd initiate a kiss or a touch or sexual intercourse. Once I waited for 6 weeks before she touched me at all. I couldn't stand it. My withdrawal was to stay away from the pain I felt when I was with her. Then Maria said, I had no idea I had no idea what he was feeling. I knew that he was not reaching out to me. We weren't touching all the time like we did when we were dating, but I just assumed that since we were married, that was not as important to him now. I did go weeks without touching him. It didn't cross my mind. I was working, taking care of things at home, trying to stay out of his way. I honestly didn't know what else I could be doing. I didn't understand why he wasn't paying attention to me. The thing is, spending time with me is what made me feel loved and appreciated. It really didn't matter whether we hugged or kissed. As long as he gave me attention, I felt loved. Once Joe and Maria discovered they were not meeting each other's needs for love, they began to turn things around. It was like I had a new husband, she said. What amazed me at that seminar today, Joe added, was the way your lecture on love languages carried me back all these years to that experience. You said in 20 minutes what it took us 6 months to learn. Well, I said, it's not how fast you learn it, but how well you learn it that matters. And obviously, you've learned it well. This man has the biggest dick energy I've ever seen. He's like, I know you learned this from someone else that I'm basically just, it's my idea. I know it helped you.
If that's actually what they learn.
Are we not going to acknowledge that they're borderline, like, the shit they're saying to each other is insane when they're angry. Or like, they're just like that, oh, you learned that if I suck your dick, you're going to stop. Sorry, that one was...
Right? Thank you. And notice again, I made you read an entire chunk because you got to the end of his story. You know what he didn't go back and ask? He didn't ask, hey, husband, how did you learn that quality time was your wife's love language? He only cares about the husband. He goes to the wife and said, oh, interesting. How did you learn that his love language was physical touch?
Also, you're right. It's hilarious that it's one sentence or two sentences that's like, they went to couples counseling for 6 months and the whole thing was changed. And
it's
like,
not even with him.
No, it's not even with him. No. He fixated on the part where they're like, wow, but we realized actually by listening to your talk today that therapist just told us everything you already know. And he's like, I know. No. Glad you guys learned it somehow.
What I'm pretty sure happened is that they spent 6 months learning how to communicate, because that's what this is. This was a communication issue. This was not a touch issue. I'm sure that he was touch starved, and we can get into that in another episode. I think that's a fascinating topic.
You want to talk to me like that and think I'm going to touch you?
Yeah. And they spent 6 months learning how to talk to each other so that he can say, hey, you haven't touched me in a while.
Yeah. And I actually, Danny, I will give credit. The part where he explains and where she is explaining, like, oh my God, I realized it, like that I get a lot in therapy is with the people that are like, I didn't realize it had been so long, or I didn't realize how much I needed that. I figured. And then I love how she's like, honestly, I don't ever need to kiss or touch him. Like, I just want to spend time with him. Like, I think that is very accurate of things a lot of couples will experience, whether it's just in a longevity of a relationship after having kids. That part felt very, very real. And like, I do love that they brought that up. It's just that wasn't tweezed apart at all.
Right.
Like, those things were not spoken to. The actual yes, like this is so common, this can happen, was just kind of said. And then it's just like, but everything got fixed now, and I'm so glad she learned she needs to touch him. And by the way, guys, these were my ideas, and they actually gave me credit for this, even though I'm not the one who helped them. It's like, that doesn't actually go into what helped them.
Yes. I love that you brought that up because that's exactly what it feels like. They spent 6 months with a therapist, with another counselor doing the work. And sure, I do think that people can have these aha moments, right? After you've done all this work, after you've built up this perspective, you can go to someone's lecture and be like, holy shit, that provides the language of everything that we've been doing. We said that at the top of the episode. I think it's great for that. What I don't like is that he's taking that little light bulb moment and he's like attributing all that work to the 5 love languages.
Yes.
See, in 20 minutes, I did what 6 months of therapy did for you. And it's like, no, no, that's not what fucking happened. 6 months of therapy is what gave them the skills to understand what you'd said in
Also,
20
he doesn't
minutes.
know what happened, nor does he care what happened.
Yeah.
He's just taking a moment to bask in his own glory of how his little seminar, and again, I'm not saying things can't resonate with people and be like, wow, oh my God, this actually is must have been like all this stuff we were working on, this other thing, and like that resonates. That's awesome. But like to even include it is like you don't know any of the work they did. You
Mhm.
can't actually speak to any of the progress they made or why. You're just giving yourself a kudos of people that gave you a compliment after a seminar.
Yeah, yeah. And so I hope that you guys can tell that this couple was very emotionally avoidant, that they didn't have the communication skills to talk about what was going on with them. The wife couldn't reach out and say, hey, I really need to spend time with you. And the husband couldn't reach out to the wife and say, hey, I've really missed the time that we spent physically. I would like to put that on the schedule. I think Ollie, you brought out something that I didn't really clock the first time is that they were cutting into each other pretty deep. They would make comments at one another that I'm pretty sure were very, very hurtful. And when we just look at the love languages, if that's all that you're reading, then it's like, well, now the next time you guys are being nasty, just touch him more. The next time you're being nasty, why don't you go and spend quality time with her? But I don't want to touch him. I don't want to spend time with her because we
Nor
didn't get
should
this
you. Let's
underlying
throw
issue.
that out there. Nor should you feel obliged to, just
Yeah.
because it's like, well, in order to fix this, start speaking each other's love languages.
Mm.
Especially, I think, if someone's love language veers on something that their partner would consider like invasive isn't the right word. Like you could feel violated, like
Sure.
doing that with someone or touching someone to an extent who's like been treating you a certain way. Like, absolutely not.
Well,
They're
I
not
got a
just
good one for you.
earned the right. Oh, God.
It's coming.
Is this our next one?
Maybe.
Okay.
So let's see. So let's go on to or let's go on to criticism number 3. A big criticism that a lot of us have with this book or the 5 love languages is that it can reinforce unhealthy or unequal dynamics in a relationship. So let's start with the story first.
So this one is page 156, titled, I Want to Be a Better Wife to You. We then discussed Anne and Glenn's primary love languages. I guessed hers was quality time, and Anne confirmed it. In our early days, we spent long hours talking together, doing things together. I really felt loved. More than anything, I wish that part of our marriage could return. When we spend time together, I feel like he really cares. But when he's always doing other things, I feel like business and other pursuits are more important than our relationship. And what do you think Glenn's primary love language is? I inquired. I think it's physical touch, and especially the sexual part of the marriage. I know that when I felt more loved by him and we were more sexually active, he had a different attitude. I think that's his primary love language. Does he ever complain about the way you talk to him? Well, he says I nag him all the time. He also says I don't support him, that I'm always against his ideas. Then let's assume, I said, that physical touch is his primary love language and words of affirmation is his secondary love language. The reason I suggest the second is that if he complains about negative words, apparently positive words would be meaningful to him. Now, what if you go home and say to Glenn, I've been thinking about us and I've decided I would like to be a better wife to you. So if you have any suggestions, I want you to know that I'm open to them. You can tell me now, or you can think about it and let me know what you think, but I would really like to work on this. Whatever his response, negative or positive, simply accept it as information. That initial statement lets him know that something different is about to happen in your relationship. Then, based upon your guess that his primary love language is physical touch and my suggestion that his secondary love language may be words of affirmation, focus your attention on those 2 areas for 1 month. If Glenn comes back with a suggestion as to how you might be a better wife, accept that information and work it into your plan. Look for positive things in Glenn's life and give him verbal affirmation about those things. In the meantime, stop all verbal complaints. If you want to complain about something, write it down in your personal notebook rather than saying anything about it to Glenn this month. Begin taking more initiative in physical touch and sexual involvement. Surprise him by being aggressive, not simply responding to his advances. Set a goal to have sexual intercourse at least once a week. And once a week the first 2 weeks, and twice a week the following 2 weeks. Anne had told me that she and Glenn had had sexual intercourse or only once or twice in the past 6 months. I figured this plan would get things off dead center rather quickly. Oh, Dr. Chapman, this is going to be difficult, Anne said. I have found it hard to be sexually responsive to him when he ignores me all the time. I have felt used rather than loved in our sexual encounters. He acts as though I'm totally unimportant all the rest of the time, and then he wants to jump in bed and use my body. Your response has been natural and normal, I assured Anne. Usually, if a wife feels loved by her husband, she will desire sexual intimacy. If she does not, she will likely feel used in the sexual context. That is why loving someone who is not loving you is extremely difficult. It goes against our natural tendencies. You will probably have to rely heavily upon your faith in God in order to do this. Perhaps it'll help if you read again Jesus' sermon on loving your enemies, loving those who hate you, loving those who use you, and then ask God to help you practice the teachings of Jesus. I could tell that Anne was following what I was saying. Her head was nodding ever so slightly. Her eyes told me she had lots of questions. But Dr. Chapman, isn't it being hypocritical to express love sexually when you have such negative feelings toward the person? Perhaps it would be helpful for us to distinguish between love as a feeling and love as an action, I said. If you claim to have feelings that you do not have, that is hypocritical, and such false communication is not the way to build intimate relationships. But if you express an act of love that is designed for the other person's benefit or pleasure, it is simply a choice. You are not claiming that the action grows out of a deep emotional bonding. You're simply choosing to do something for his benefit. I think that must be what Jesus meant. Certainly, we do not have warm feelings for people who hate us. That would be abnormal. But we can do loving acts for them. That is simply a choice. We hope that such loving acts will have a positive effect upon their attitudes and behavior and treatment, but at least we have chosen to do something positive for them. My answer seemed to satisfy Anne, at least for the moment. I had the feeling that we would discuss that again. I also had the feeling that if the experiment was going to get off the ground, it would be because of Anne's deep faith in God. After the first month, I said, I want you to ask Glenn for feedback on how you're doing. Using your own words, ask him, Glenn, you remember a few weeks ago when I told you I was going to try to be a better wife, I want to ask you how you think I've been doing. Whatever Glenn says, accept it as information. Whatever his response, do not argue, but accept it and assure him that you are serious about being a better wife. And if he has additional suggestions, you're open to them. Follow this pattern of asking for feedback once a month for the entire 6 months. Whenever Glenn gives you the first positive response, you will know that your efforts are getting through to him emotionally. 1 week after you receive the first positive feedback, I want you to make a request of Glenn, something you would like him to do, something in keeping with your primary love language. For example, you may say to him one evening, Glenn, do you know something I would like to do? Do you remember how we used to go take walks in Rinalda Gardens together? I'd like to go do that with you on Thursday night. The kids are going to be staying at my mom's. Do you think that would be possible? Make the request something specific, not general. Don't say, I wish we would spend more time together. That's too vague. How will you know when he's done it? But if you make your request specific, he will know exactly what you want, and you will know that when he does it, he's choosing to do something for your benefit. Do this each month. If he does it, fine. If he doesn't do it, fine. But when he does it, you will know he is responding to your needs. In the process, you are teaching him your primary love language because the requests you make are in keeping with your love language. If he chooses to begin loving you in your primary love language, your positive emotions toward him will begin to resurface. Your emotional tank will begin to fill up, and in time, the marriage will, in fact, be reborn. Dr. Chapman, I would do anything if that could happen, Anne said. Well, I responded, it'll take a lot of hard work, but I believe it's worth a try. I'm personally interested to see if this experiment works and if our hypothesis is true. I would like to meet with you regularly throughout this process, perhaps every 2 weeks. And I would like you to keep records on positive words of affirmation that you give Glenn each week. Also, I would like you to bring me your list of complaints that you have written in your notebook without stating them to Glenn. Perhaps from the felt complaints, I can help you build specific requests for Glenn that will help meet some of those frustrations. Eventually, I want you to learn how to share your frustrations and irritations in a constructive way. And I want you and Glenn to learn how to work through those irritations and conflicts. But during this 6 months experiment, I want you to write them down without telling Glenn. Anne left, and I believe she had the answer to her question. Is it possible to love someone whom you hate? In the next 6 months, Anne saw a tremendous change in Glenn's attitude and treatment of her. The first month, he treated the whole thing lightly, but after the second month, he gave her positive feedback about her efforts. In the last 4 months, he responded positively to almost all of her requests, and her feelings for him began to change drastically. Glenn never came for counseling, but he did listen to some of my CDs and discussed them with Anne. He encouraged Anne to continue her counseling, which she did for another 3 months after our experiment. To this day, Glenn swears to his friends that I am a miracle worker. I know, in fact, that love is a miracle worker.
Fuck off.
Okay, Gary Chapman. I came in being like, okay, but he is, da-da-da-da-da. Gary Chapman, fuck you. Fuck you. It's always the woman's fault. Guess what, buddy? My experiment, if every woman decided to suck her husband's dick every night, I bet you these marriages would improve. I bet you anything we'd have these men fucking taking out the trash, buying us shit, cleaning in a fucking thong. They'll do whatever we want. You want to throw anal in there? They'll fucking hang all the Christmas lights down the whole street. They'll do anything.
You get it now.
My heart's going. It's never about Glenn. It's never about Joe.
Yeah, he's fine.
It's about Sonia and Maria and Anne.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Chapman, you're gross. You're gross. You're dumb. You're dumb. Your little experiment. Yeah, guess what? Let's give men fucking sex everywhere. I bet they'll do some shit. Stupid. Sorry for that slight blip, but Danny and I actually had to take a pause for a second. We ran into when I was gonna have to jump off for session. I didn't know we'd get so fired up over this episode. So I have now, it is the next morning actually, 7 a.m. bright and early. Well, dark and early. Mm-hmm. But I've had a little bit of time to sit with this and not just be maybe as aggressive as I was yesterday upon initial reading. And I was just telling Danny, I remember reading this and thinking the examples were interesting, or just feeling like, I don't know if you could really say that. Or it kind of felt like the, everyone's got the flu and everyone's been eating eggs. Eggs must have given everyone the flu. And it's like, you can't really do that. And so I remember that's how I felt reading it the first time. I don't think I remember how horrible he can come across and just how much of like the woman's problem these issues seem to be in every example. There might be one in here that it's not. But I mean, for the most part, I think it's safe to say we are constantly seeing that it is the woman who needs to fix something first or address something first, and then the men's behavior will change. Mm-hmm. And I also, again, I get this is from a religious lens. It's nothing against religion. I just think when you are writing this as not an overtly religious text, it feels like this is more for like a couple's text. I just think it's really dangerous to essentially be like, oh, you don't want to have sex with your husband. That's okay. Power through. Sometimes love is action. Jesus would want you to.
Yeah.
Like, that just scares me.
Yeah. And I want to double down. This is not about religion because I am someone with Christian views. I don't want people to read this and be like, yeah, this is why Christians are idiots. It's like, no, this has nothing to do with, I don't want this to be seen as religion. Unfortunately, this is someone who has probably raised in a bubble. Unfortunately, I think Christianity has a lot of room to grow when it comes to understanding relationships, but Yeah, this is this guy. I want to focus on this guy. It's I'm very, very happy that you see this, and I hope that you understand why it took me a year. You needed 24 hours. This one took me a year to have to sit with so that I can get through an episode like that.
Danny, I was both so sad and then later slightly grateful that the minute I got done reading that excerpt was like kind of perfect and I had like 1 minute to go to my appointment because I was like, dang it, that brought out such raw emotion. But now I'm like, maybe this is good because again, it's like if Gary Chapman was saying all the same things in like a very different setting or for a very specific audience or like I don't innately have any issue with like these are your opinions based on being a pastor and based on being religious. Like no, I can't fault you for any of that.
Mm,
But it's, I think, the delivery of it, the way that this is, like we said yesterday, what does it mean? I don't know, but a #1 New York Times bestseller. Many people I've heard talk about this are not talking about it religiously at all,
mm,
nor do I think they have any idea that
mm-mm,
it's originally rooted in religion. And so or maybe not rooted in religion, but you know what I mean. Like he is coming from a very religious background. Just some of these examples, like I'd be mortified to tell someone that this is how we should go about these issues. What I do appreciate about a lot of the examples, other than the fact that he is hyper fixated on computers, maybe it's because it was the 90s.
maybe.
And it's like computers were like starting to be a big thing. And it's like everyone's on these computers. Maybe I do appreciate that the examples to me make a lot of sense. Like, oh, he's constantly doing this and I don't feel loved. Or like she never wants to have sex anymore. Like on a really zoomed out level, we do tend to see those things a lot,
Yeah,
specifically when it comes to those genders. Like it is a reality. But I think the flippantness, which how with how easily we can fix it, how everything can boil down to the 5 love languages. Like you said, what was the other example? You're like, this was a communication problem.
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, they probably worked on communication in 6 months of therapy. But this last one, Danny, oh boy.
Yeah. So just a few things off of it. Like he said, well, if it fixes it, great, right? If he changes, awesome. And if he doesn't change, accept it.
Oh, and he says keep trying for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And so you're telling me to keep having sex with my husband, who I believe she said in her example, like he
Use his
wasn't
name.
being very nice. Like there were reasons why she didn't want to have sex, or he was like completely ignoring her.
Yeah.
Like, you think I'm gonna power through and keep trying to have sex with someone and like show more initiative for 6 months potentially
Mhm.
if he's not changing the behaviors that have turned off my sex drive?
Yeah. And I also think that this is an important place to note that, again, we're reading an updated version. If you were to read
I'd like to read the
the older versions or the original versions, you would notice that he actually cleaned up the text.
how?
There used to be more explicit examples. This guy actually came off as a lot more abusive. And in the updated versions, they just took away some of that stuff, or he changed like who initiated the sex thing or who, is actually saying this. That stuff has been changed and moved around because, again, I can only assume that as, the decades went on, people read it and were like, hey, this is problematic potentially what's going on. But because he doesn't have any real fucking examples, the only thing he can do is go back to his work and be like, well, let me kind of change it here and there instead of saying, well, I've had now 20 extra years of counseling. Is there no one else I can speak about?
Okay, I was gonna say, yeah, if that's especially how the book is changing, like, again, I get using case examples, and yes, we can't like use people's real names. We're gonna change certain things so you don't know exactly what we're talking about. But if like one example didn't work, quote unquote, or it was like, woo, like your girl, like you can't really talk about like straight up abuse like that and say it's okay anymore. I think what I imagine a therapist would do in their book is be like, okay, great, I will remove that example because that's not a fake example. That was a real example. And
Mhm.
if it's kind of null and void or just like for the political climate, we can't do that kind of stuff anymore, I will need to remove that and come up with a different example that is still a real example.
Mhm.
What I like if you're just tweaking and playing around with the stories, then to me it's even more egregious. Like, did you write this in a month? Like, how did you like the examples are bad and you made them up anyway.
Mhm.
So, like, if you just kind of are playing around with them, you have the ability to make them sound amazing. And so
And this is the
it
best
like
you can come up
alarms.
with.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it alarms me
Yeah.
that you wrote this being like, couples, they need this.
Mhm.
I don't, I'd love to know what his ego is like.
It's pretty huge because this is a franchise book. There's love language. Look at the first page. Like open up the first page, the first couple of pages, and you will see that there's love languages for kids, love languages for yes.
We have to get our hands on that.
Yeah.
We have to get our hands on that. It's like,
Yes.
honey, if he pushes or hits you, he loves you, and that's stay with him.
Yeah, this is and going back to like the have
5
sex
love
with them.
languages for men. First of all, Mr. Gary Chapman, we know that whole book's just gonna be about sex. So the difference in
That
that one is
bet you anything
blowjobs.
that book is for women to understand the love languages of men. That book is not the 5 love languages men's guide to the 5 love languages. That's not what
No,
that
no,
is.
no, it's this is when you should give him a blowjob. This is when
Yeah.
you should just, actually, when you're mad at him, it's really
Channel
weird, but
that rage onto his penis.
yes, this is actually when shower sex would help, like women. You don't
I do think it's
understand.
funny how much well, I think it's interesting how
No.
often he will say, well, especially in this example, be more aggressive, initiate more sex. Because if you notice that there's actually a point where he moves the conversation in a weird way. He asks, well, do you know what his love language is? And she says, well, physical touch, primarily the sex part. Like that really kind of gets him going. What he says next is, does he ever complain about the way that you talk to him? Notice how he just moves the conversation. It didn't organically go there. That was a question he then asked. So I think it's interesting. It's like he's uncomfortable with sex, especially if a woman brings it up. He doesn't want to talk about it. And he says, naturally, what she responds to with is, well, yeah, he complains that I nag. Got it. All right. So let's assume that his primary is physical touch, but let's guess that his secondary must be words of affirmation. The conversation did not organically go there. That is not what she said. He gave that to her and then gave the plan afterwards. All right. So now for the next week, for the next 2 weeks, you can because you said, again, this is most likely an update because you said his primary is physical touch. Why don't you start initiating sex? Why don't you start being more aggressive? And then, because of my guess, why don't you start giving him compliments? Why don't you start looking for all the positive things that you like about him? And when she fires back with the truth that says, that doesn't feel right. I don't think that I should be giving my body to someone who I have such negative feelings towards. I find this so interesting because he does the whole, well, it's an action. You don't have to always feel it. But the whole premise of your book is that this is a love language. And now you want to make a distinction between, well, there is a loving act that you can do without any love in it. And it's sex. I don't understand how people can endorse this and then get upset when I say that there is a difference between intimacy and sex. Just tell them that you want to have sex. Get comfortable with saying the word sex because intimacy and sex are not synonymous. They are not the same thing. And here is a perfect example. Even a pastor is telling you, well, you don't have to actually love him. This isn't going to be intimate. You're not going to feel close. He's not going to see you. He is going to use you, but just pray about it because I'm sure God would want you to.
The the other And I'm not saying that in every example he's saying that the men want sex, but I think it's in most of the examples, men's primary love language is physical touch. And so what irritates me or what I don't love is he, like you said, Danny, he comes up with these questions, which it was like this in one of the first examples too, I remember. Like he just goes like, do you have anything against computers? And then it
Yeah.
just went to like, it jumps in a way that's not linear, or I think not a way a therapist or a professional, a mental health professional, it'd be like, where did you, what? Like, what are you doing? What I don't love about it though, is I think it does come across and all his examples that granted, he is writing all of this. It's very like, wow, how did you know? Or like crazy, where it's like, I can give me couples that are irritated with each other, that have been together a long time. And I'm sure I can just throw some don't tell me anything and walk in and I'll be like, does she irritate you sometimes?
Yeah.
Does his stupidity drive you insane? It's like you're not a mind reader by being like, see, I thought. It's like there are patterns that exist in long-term relationships. You are not some I was going to use the word prophet, but I realize it's a religious text, so it was kind of ironic. But I just mean like this guy is trying to come across, and he even says like that these people are like, wow, you taught us so much. Like, you're amazing. And it's like, dude, you're not. The things that you are saying, anyone could probably guess. Like, it's not magical that you're figuring out. Like, that's probably his primary. It's like, yes, most men that are complaining that they're not getting enough sex probably want more sex. Surprise. Like, it's just the cure, the
Hmm.
fix.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine telling someone, like, the traumatizing, like,
Hmm.
telling someone to just have sex with their spouse, knowing full well that at least the way he is shaped in this edition, it sounds like even worse in the last edition or in, whatever, like the original. Like, this person does not just have the right to your body
Hmm.
when you don't want to give it to them and
Hmm.
they're being an asshole. That's not how these things are fixed.
Yeah.
This is how, like, resentment builds
Hmm.
and murders happen.
Yeah, this is the start of a documentary. Yeah, the examples I think I picked were trying to be as close to the criticisms as possible, and so it might look like we're focusing on sex, but number one, there's just slim pickings in this book. They're not really great to begin with.
Also, we're reading like 3 or 4. I like how long the passages were, Danny, because like you
Thank you.
said, we are not clickbaity, like, "Oh, let us read you one sentence out of context and be like, crazy, he sounds horrible." It's like,
This is the
we're
whole
reading
conversation.
pages. We're reading pages.
Mhm.
And, like, even when I have hope, like, there's a paragraph that's just setting a scene or an environment, and I'm like, "Fair. This is common." Or, like, I have seen this a lot in my own work. I've seen this referred to in research. Like, yes, this does seem like a couple dynamic that comes up. Like, even when I really wanna be on his team, it's just the way he seems to wrap it up with a bow, or when he's like, "Great, so this is what I told him to do." I'm like, "Oh my god." Like, you feel like a weird older family member that's
Mhm.
like, "Why would no, 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 no." Like, why would you suggest that? That is not okay.
Mhm. Yeah, it's still overwhelmingly gendered. You will notice if you read through the other examples, men are still primarily focused on physical touch or words of affirmation. Again, he plugged that into this one. And when he's looking at women, they're primarily kind of focused on quality time or gifts.
Yeah.
And so it's still very gendered, which blows my mind when you think about, again, I'm in class teaching a field that is predominantly still women. And so I have all these women telling me that they would offer their couples, their clients, the 5 love languages.
But didn't they
And I
also
look
tell
at them
you
and I'm like,
hadn't read
my
it?
dear, have you read it though? Have you
Yeah.
read it? Have you read it? Because I struggle to if I was any other dude, I would probably love this book because this book is all about just having my partner shut the hell up and make me happy. This guy in this example never came to therapy. This guy never showed up to therapy, and he said, "Well, no, you're the problem. You go to therapy." Like, how much more of a red flag do you need in a relationship? And so this poor girl, yeah, because she's committed to the relationship, because she doesn't know any better, probably, she shows up and she does this thing for 6 months. Like, how can you think that this is a good resource to give to someone? This is really bad. But again, we did this for a reason. Let's actually go back to why we brought this up, is because the third critique is that it can reinforce unequal and unhealthy dynamics. And I hope that we showed this. The five love languages are often used to justify an imbalance in the relationship. So, for example, one partner consistently performs an acts of service, another partner receives them but doesn't reciprocate emotionally. And then the explanation becomes, well, this is just how we show love differently. But as Ollie once said, it's not just about intention, it's about impact. I think that's super important. Just because you love each other doesn't mean that that's like saying it or kind of acknowledging that there's love behind the things that we do does not mean that the partner is actually feeling loved. And I can't understand how this woman, she must be a saint. She must be a saint because
Right.
she was doing all of the work. This was one of the most unbalanced examples that I can find. If one person is chronically overfunctioning, caretaking, or minimizing their needs, the model can accidentally validate the patterns instead of challenging it. And that's what it did. She's in a relationship where this person is ignoring her, being rude. And again, I'm not ignoring the quite very realistic possibility that they're throwing shots at each other, right? I'm not ignoring the fact that there's probably resentment having built up and that they're being rude to one another. But this guy just checked out. He had no involvement other than listening to Chapman's CDs, which of course I'm sure he thought were amazing because he's the one reaping all the rewards. If you have any complaint, Chapman says, don't ever tell him again. Write them in your little journal and bring them to me. And so this guy's now living in a bubble. He's getting sex and he's continuing to probably say bad shit to her. After a couple weeks, he's like, let me try something. If you really want to be a good wife, go and do this. And she does it on the advice of Chapman. And so like he doesn't learn anything. This guy doesn't learn anything. Might he soften? I maybe, because now he thinks he has a trophy wife. But this is such an inauthentic reality that this guy is living in. In some cases, especially for people socialized to be accommodating, so are people pleasers, the love languages can reinforce the self abandonment rather than mutual care. And I think that is exactly what happened in this example.
Oh, okay, wait, Danny, I have a few thoughts. So number one, like even when I was reading it and it was like, okay, write them down. Never say them to him. It's like I do there is one couples exercise that I do where especially if people feel like they're kind of in a rut of like, oh, like every time we're in a cycle where it's like, oh my gosh, like we're bickering about all these little things, or it feels like, something always kind of flares up, like whatever's been happening. There is a couples exercise one of my, supervisors taught me that I really that, like, if it's like a 10 out of 10 problem or like 8, 9, or 10 where it's like, "Okay, we need to address this right now," it's like, absolutely say it in the moment. But if it just starts being like little things that you're noticing or like bugging you, you just write them down. You can jot them down in your phone, you can jot them down in a journal,
Mhm.
and then you have either like 1 day a week
Sure.
or you pick a few times, and it's just like 10 minutes, but you each take a turn and you like go down your list and you say it. And it can just, and I like it because A, it still gives you a space to talk about it, but like, okay, it doesn't need to be done right in this moment. And I think it also gives people perspective because normally what happens is one was written down kind of in a rush, or you were so angry that you just jotted a few words because you thought you'd remember. And so then you're telling them and you're like, and then 3 days ago, uh, you're like, I don't actually remember what that one was, but I was mad about it. You're like, and then the next one. And it's like, it's cute. I think when things still do bother you, absolutely, you have a space to say it. But I think you just start to realize, like, oh, like, yeah, it's okay that when I live with this person and the longer I'm with them, I get irritated by like everything they do sometimes. And like, it doesn't need to be stuff that derails our entire day. And it can be bridged in a way that like just kind of lessens the tension a little bit. It's also allowed a little bit more space, so you might be able to share it with them in a like, oh, like, no, you left the cabinets open again. Like, we've really talked about that. And then sometimes the spouse, again, because we're removed a little, they're like, oh shit, I did notice I did that. I'm sorry. We talked about that, which is way different than how it can feel in the moment. So it's like, yes, some of his suggestions I feel like are, I wouldn't even say halfway there, because he has no premise by which he's suggesting this. But it's like, sure, yes, like sometimes you can write them down. I guess the other thing, and this is a conversation for another time, Danny, but there is a part of me that's like, wow, but if there really are people that like this is how they, whether it's religious based, cultural based, like there are people that want much more traditional
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
marriages or partnerships. And like, I don't know. I almost feel like the more we are therapists, the more like I am both fascinated, intrigued, and sometimes like envious of people that truly, like, if they genuinely feel like, no, like this is my role, this is what I got to do. I'm kind of like, wow, you're so much better than me. Like, what? I could never imagine taking this guy's advice or like, I don't know. I can't even fathom feeling like I'm not being respected or loved, and I'm willing to do all the work up front to see if that'll change. I'm like, holy shit. Like,
Mm.
that takes a wild person, like someone's ability to do that. I have no clue
Mhm.
how some of these women are doing this. And I honestly, a part of me like doesn't want to judge that if that's what they want to do and that's what they feel partnership or marriage is about. I mean, I can't fault them for that just because they
Yeah.
want something very different than what I would deem
Mhm.
as healthy or what I would want. And a part of me truly, like, I am so fascinated by wanting to understand. I don't really have an issue understanding why men would like this concept. They don't have to do anything. And I do want to share, Danny, on page 162. Literally, it almost feels like a synopsis that he gives in like a little over half a page. And it's just like, if your marriage is in the serious trouble discussed in this chapter, you need to begin by making a strong commitment of the will to undertake the following experiment. You risk further pain and rejection, but you also stand to regain a healthy and fulfilling marriage. Count the cost. It's worth the attempt. And there are 4 steps. 1, ask how you can be a better spouse, and regardless of the other's attitude, act on what he or she tells you. Continue to both seek more input and comply with those wishes with all your heart and will. Assure your spouse that your motives are pure. Like, okay, so number 1, like blindly do whatever your spouse is telling you to do and
Yeah.
like enjoy it, or just, like act like you really want to be doing this. Number 2, when you receive positive feedback, there's progress, which also like, no, you don't. You know that you're potentially just, what's the word? Like, you're just allowing them to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there's progress. Like, it just means like, oh, thank goodness you're finally you're giving in.
Mhm.
Like, duh, they're going to be happy. You're literally saying, ask your spouse what you want from, or how you could be better to them. Do whatever they say. And then it's like, if you receive positive feedback, how would you not receive positive feedback when you just said, do exactly what they tell you to do, no questions asked? It's like, what? Okay, then sorry. Each month, take one non-threatening but specific request that is easy for your spouse. So it's like, also,
Don't
wait a minute.
overwhelm them.
Yeah, it's like you're telling me, and granted, it's funny, he doesn't say what gender to do this, but it's like you're telling one person to take the role of ask how you could be better, do whatever they say. But once a month, you can ask them for something that you deem would be very easy for them. Do I feel like you're telling the men to do that? Absolutely not. And then, I'm so sorry. Number 3, when your spouse responds and meets your need, you will be able to react with not only your will, but your emotions as well. Without overreacting, continue positive feedback and affirmation of your spouse at these times. And then number 4, as your marriage begins to truly heal and grow deeper, make sure you don't rest on your laurels and forget your spouse's love language and daily needs. You're on the road to your dreams. So stay there. Put appointments into your schedule to assess together how you're doing. You mean to continue to ask them how I can just be perfect for them?
Yeah. What
Like, this
frustrates
is
me is
insane. You put a 4 bullet point of how to do this, and the fourth one is just like, as you reach complete serenity, like keep it going. So it's technically you gave 3 steps.
yeah.
on how to fix
Yeah.
potentially domestic violence, which is insane.
What's annoying is that as you read this, again, I can hear smarter people read what or listen to what you just read and be like, Ollie, but come on. Obviously, we're not going to take exactly what they say. But my gripe with that, my issue with that is like, then don't write it that way.
And
You
also,
as an author have a responsibility to write something that I know there's always going to be someone who could misinterpret it, but you gave them the least amount of effort to try and mitigate that.
I have a hard time for people being like, well, but that people don't really think that. Like, there are still groups of people who believe you should take, and I'm not just the Bible, any religious text at
Hmm.
its word. Like, there are still people that view those things, even though it's basically a game of telephone we played thousands of years ago, that like, no, 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 you should take this at its word. And like, you can stone your wife. I mean, like, there are people that still truly believe these things. There are people that believe anything. There are people that just don't have. My grandmother is 90 and owns a Spanish Bible she can't read and swears by it. I'm like, you can't, you're going to tell me. And I don't say that out of, I mean, it's like, bless her soul. But there are people that don't, that are going to read this and be like, wow, okay, like maybe that's what it means to be a good
Yeah.
spouse. It's to like
Yes.
do whatever my husband says.
Hmm.
Or, and I think the intention's there. I think like in a way, I'm like, damn, those women would be better than me. And I say women because he's never telling the men to do this. But it breaks my heart that anyone would read this and not view it as, hey, this is a very religious guy who wrote this in the 90s, who is not basing this on research and is just telling you that this is how he feels a productive marriage or like fixing marital problems can happen.
Yeah.
I wish it was like very, very clear that that is what this is about. And I just don't like that instead it's like, wow, this is a marriage book
Hmm.
for couples that therapists would endorse.
Hmm. Yeah, they have seminars. Go to them. They have retreats on this shit. This is a whole empire for this guy. And another thing that bugs me is that as you read it, he does give a few like nice things that a therapist would do. Like he does start to kind of set up SMART goals. He does have like these small little reflections. He has these like bits and pieces that sound like therapy. So to someone who's not trained or to someone who's actually the target audience of this book, which I imagine is a partner at the end of their rope, really wanting to save their marriage, really wishing that they had a better relationship, they would be very influenced by this. They would see this and be easily taken by it because it is.
Well, and Danny's
Mm,
literally at the very end. I don't know if it's considered an epilogue, but at the very end when he has like it's on, well, I guess I don't know because it says page 13, but it's at the very back. It's on like 165. But it's titled A Personal Word. So it's just like his afterward. Like it starts by being like, well, what do you think? So it's like it's after like all his concepts, but he straight up says, well, what do you think? Having read these pages, walked in and out of the lives of several couples, visited small villages and large cities, sat with me in the counseling office, and talked with people in restaurants. What do you think? It's like I do feel like he's trying to sell himself as this like knower of knowledge. It's like I have probably taught, I mean, you and I have worked with literally, I mean, I would argue like probably thousands of people like over the course of our career. And I
short career
still would
comparatively, mind
never,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like I still would not be like, I've talked to thousands of people. It's like you literally said several couples. That's crazy to me. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I just feel like what's being sold is not accurate of
Hmm.
who he is or his and again, I'm not saying that he is not an amazing pastor. I am not discrediting his career or his expertise. I just think to resell it, I don't know. I feel like that's you and me being like kind of trying to sell ourselves as like a pelvic floor specialist or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I can for sure like there are certain things that I might know what the diagnoses are, be like, ooh, never mind. Like that seems like we might be leaning more medical that's sounding more like this. Let me refer you. That doesn't mean that I have extensive knowledge on like all the medical problems that would come with sex related struggles.
Yeah.
I might know of that because it pops up in my work sometimes. So I need to know enough to know when to refer or when to kind of like work with someone else. But I would never like try and take on that expertise and knowledge as my own.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
just don't like it. I get that vibe from this guy.
Yeah. So let's move on because believe it or not, we still have one more thing that we have to touch.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. This is turning out to be one of the longest episodes, but I've been having fun, so I hope everyone else has been learning something. Critique number 4 is that the 5 love languages ignore attachment, trauma, and nervous systems. So, from a therapeutic perspective, this is one of the biggest gaps. The love languages don't address attachment styles, trauma responses, emotional safety, or how people react under stress. Someone who needs constant reassurance may not have a love language issue, they may have an anxious attachment style. Someone who avoids physical touch may not dislike it, they may be dysregulated or feel unsafe. And when we reduce those dynamics to just different love languages, we miss opportunities for healing and deeper understanding.
Okay, so that's what I was mentioning earlier when I asked like where this one
Yep.
would fit in. Because
Mhm.
yeah, I can imagine, or honestly, I even think back to certain people I dated, and it's like they would probably say they hated words of affirmation. But like I don't like I think that came from a place of like that needed healing in
Yeah,
their inner child. Like, I
exactly.
don't think that that is an accurate representation of like, "Ugh, like, I hate that." It's like, oh boy, wait a minute." Like, why? Like, that's a weird reaction to someone
Hmm.
just wanting to, like, give you a compliment or say something nice about you. And so
Yes.
it's like, I don't necessarily think that's why I think it's an interesting premise. I like the idea that there are these 5 different ways that we can receive love, or might like or not like it. But I think it's more just as a concept. I think it's interesting because it can help us gather data. Like, yeah, for example, if you are like averse to physical touch, I'm like, "Ooh, that's interesting." That's different
Hmm.
than it just not being your first love language. That's like, what's going on
Thank you.
there? So I think it can help give you data. I think it's good for observational purposes and like to help build people's awareness around like, I never quite like that. You're right. That is kind of an odd response. Like, absolutely, it can allow us to dig a little deeper or look at these things in different ways. But to me, that doesn't mean like, oh, no, I hate that. And we should just be like, oh, okay, great. Then that's your fifth love language. We don't need to worry about it.
100%. And I think as sex therapists, I think this shows up a little bit for us if we were to look at physical touch. I've always said, I think sexuality is socialized more than it is like just this innate. It definitely is this nurture versus nature thing. I think it's a lot more nurture than we want to admit because boys will be socialized to like physical touch more, to want physical touch more. And if you look at if you talk to a lot of women, yeah, a lot of them like sex, but they don't like it as much. I don't think it's because it's not their love language or because it's not something that they enjoy. It's they've been socialized to not really enjoy it. Either their education is shit or they've been reduced and objectified and sexualized their whole life. Of course, they wouldn't be, so into it. I really don't like this. As a couples specialist and existentialist, I've spent a lot of time working with couples and people just trying to define what love is, right? Thousands of hours have gone to listening to how people describe how they love, why they love, and what drives them to love. And what I've noticed is that there is a considerable amount of people who lack a sense of like confidence or peace when they love. In other words, I think people grow to behave in these ways because it's what got them praise. It's what got them rewarded. And it's what they've learned is made them worthwhile. So now, as adults, it's what they do to get their partner's validation. And they want their partner to reciprocate that. That's not a love language. This is an anxiety language. You don't know how many times I've spoken to people and they're like, well, my love language is acts of service. And so I do the dishes, I take out the trash, I pick up the dog shit, I do all this stuff. But when you get down to it, it's like, why? Well, because I don't know how else. Like that's how I feel that I'm useful in the house. This is what I think I can do. Or, I give up my body. Why? Well, because that's what my partner always wants. And this is how I can tell that they love me if I do these things, right? doing all these acts can tend to come from a place of anxiety, not from a place of love. And I don't think that enough people give space to really see the difference. They conflate, they confuse these two things.
Well, and Danny, if you think about it too, it's like that's I feel like it's the same thing with so many people of like, oh, like that have all this anxiety about like where they should be in life or what success means or like it's all so similar. And I'm not saying it all comes from the exact same place, but it's like why? Like why is that? Why does that mean success to you? What does success mean?
Hmm.
Why do you need to get there? What will you feel if you get there? Like I do think love is very similar. It's like, okay, well, wait a minute. How did we come to figure out or
Yeah.
define love that way? Why do we want these things? Or like, why do we feel we have to give it in this way? And in a sense, I feel like Gary Chapman is reinforcing that because he's saying like, well, if this is what they want from you, lean in, lean in, lean in. And it's like all you're doing, not in every case, but in a lot of these examples, I can imagine all you're doing is reinforcing like, see, I knew I just had to keep having sex with them when I didn't want to. And
Hmm.
yeah, I guess that's the answer. I love that because you're so right. Like, so much of this in our work would probably be about, like, okay, but why do you feel you have to do that? To get love or to be
Hmm.
loved? And, like, why do just because you come in viewing love a certain way doesn't mean at some point we're never gonna get into that and be like, "Well, maybe is that true? Should we maybe kinda change our operational definition of that a little bit?"
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't think he's addressing any of those, like, really those inner workings.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for seeing my frustration with this book.
Oh, yeah, all you gotta do is read a handful of those examples, and it's a little alarming.
Yeah. So, is there a healthier alternative? Yeah. Instead of asking your partner, what is your love language? Instead of asking your clients, well, what are your love languages? We encourage you to ask questions like, what helps you feel emotionally safe? What do you do when you're overwhelmed? What do you need from me when you're feeling overwhelmed? How do you experience care when you're struggling? What makes you feel unseen or unsupported? These questions leave room for change, growth, and context because humans aren't static categories. Also, if you guys are interested in better resources, there's so many better books that we can be referring, we can be inviting our couples to read. Harville Hendrix, Getting the Love You Want, is an amazing book on imago theory, therapy. Gottman and Silver's Seven Principles for Making Marriage Work is an amazing book. Sue Johnson's Hold Me Tight. And if you guys are interested in sex therapy, almost anything written by Barry McCarthy is really, really good. Like, there's so many other books. Please take a look at those ones. Take this one off your shelf, burn it, and start giving people better information. In closing, the five love languages aren't evil. We just think that they're extremely limited. And when used by someone who is not trained to actually help people, I do think that they could be dangerous. So, used casually, I think they can start a conversation. I think it's sometimes fun just to, bring it up. It's inevitable. Used rigidly, it could really shut down a relationship. Real intimacy requires flexibility, emotional responsibility, and a willingness to grow beyond what feels comfortable, not just speaking a language, but truly learning to listen. And we're not just going to stop here. One of the things that I always had on my mind when we were planning this episode is I don't want us to just spend 2 hours trashing a book. I actually want to go back and give people better information. And so we are going to do your freaking job for you, Gary Chapman. We're going to spend the next couple of episodes and we're actually going to be going over each of the five love languages to help give you guys better information, a healthier way to apply it, and hopefully a smarter way to understand it. So I'm really excited for what we have coming up.
I am too, Danny. I love this because I really think this is so many people know about this that might not necessarily be in therapy or like I feel like so many people have heard of the five love languages
Mhm.
that I'm very glad, yeah, we can not only just rip Gary Chapman apart because I think he needs to be leveled a little bit. But we can actually like we have other ideas. We would like to at least say what we how we think these things can be viewed or ways that you can look at these things that are slightly more healthy or productive in your
Mhm.
relationship. So, I'm so excited for this too.
Yeah. Yeah, very excited. We are not endorsing this book by any means, but I think it's important for us to have these discussions because it's still very popular. It still comes up a lot that if it does, rather than shutting down the conversation, hopefully you can engage with it and help steer people in a healthier direction.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I guess I'll see you next week, Ollie.
See you next week, Danny.
Bye bye.